Hello, Paul. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm also good. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're busy and I'm able to squeeze into your schedule. Thank you for this interview for today's podcast. So what do you think we're going to talk about today?
Uh, well, I believe we're going to be talking about OFWs, the overall kind of cultural, emotional kind of aspect of that. And I'm hoping to share some of my experiences working with OFWs from my perspective.
This is actually one of the reasons why I feel you're the best candidate to be interviewed for this podcast is because of your background. And speaking about background, can you please tell us where you grew up?
Well, I was born in the Philippines,
Uh-huh.
but I moved to the UK when I was a baby, so just 1 year old. My mum, who is Filipino, and my dad is from the UK. I moved from the Philippines to the UK when I was very, very young. So I don't remember really, obviously being born in the Philippines, but because obviously I moved to the UK, but I had a Filipino mom. I was always raised in a household where you had those Filipino values. So those were always present. Respect for elders, working hard, putting your family first. So
Right.
very much a British environment, but there was still some really important like Filipino elements within that. Because I only ever used to hear my mom talking on video calls to grandparents and things like
Uh-huh.
that. But when you're actually there in the country itself, it is different. Again, it's a bit of a culture shock, and I didn't really understand even fully the Filipino culture until I'd moved to Dubai really about 8 years ago. So
Right.
I would say I'm probably like maybe a little bit in the middle. So, I'm British at heart in a sense because I've always grown up there, but I'm definitely culturally Filipino in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to my values and so things like that.
So what you're trying to say is you are between being British and being Filipino. Is that correct?
When you have a Filipino mom who's worked abroad and left the Philippines and you've
Mm.
been fully exposed to that, with a single parent for quite a lot of my important childhood years, you kind of have those things never leave you. They'll never leave you.
Right. Since you've mentioned about your mom, I assume she was an OFW, correct?
Yes, yes, for sure. She left the Philippines in her mid-20s. I think she was 24.
Yeah.
And she graduated. She went to one of the big universities in the Philippines, but she felt going to the UK would be trying to provide a better life for me and later my brother.
When did you first hear the term OFW?
Well, I never, yeah, that's the thing. I never really heard the term until I moved to Dubai. So I moved to Dubai about 8 years ago, and it was when I started managing stores there. And obviously, there's a very
Mhm.
high Filipino quota of expats working in Dubai. And before that, okay, yes, I knew my mom had left, and she'd left the Philippines to go home to go to the UK. But I didn't realize just how many actually did it. When it's your own mum, you kind of think, oh, it's a bit of a bubble kind of thing. But I just didn't realize, and it was a
Right.
big kind of eye opener for me. My first impression of it was massive admiration because when and this is that's why when I moved to Dubai and realized it mirrored straight back to what my mum did. She left everything behind, everything familiar to her, to build a better life for our family. And when working in retail specifically, you meet a lot of OFWs, and some of them in my team that weren't just workers. They didn't just come in and do the job. They were breadwinners, they were parents, they were siblings. And they had to juggle so much, heavy emotional, financial responsibilities whilst they were showing up to work every single day with a smile on their face. So it was really that's when, and it was them that actually mentioned OFW. It wasn't me. So they say, oh, being an OFW, and I ask, oh, what does that mean? So they were the ones explaining it, and then obviously, and it was just a terminology. But then once you get the term, you then link that to kind of, oh, well, of course. I mean, this is the kind of mentality that they have.
Okay, thank you. But observing Filipino expats both in Dubai and in Singapore, um, what was it like working with Filipino colleagues
Well,
based
I
on
mean,
your observation?
it was it was fun actually. One of the first things because even when they have all of these kind of concerns and burdens behind the scenes, they have such amazing personalities. That's kind of one thing that I remember. People
Mm-hmm.
who don't have this kind of burden and working in a different country, they don't have this kind of mentality. I think that they was really, really inspiring because there's a certain when it comes to the Filipino people, there's a certain warmth. That they're extremely loyal, and they're so committed in what they bring to the workplace. And they're actually able to still create a sense of home, even if they're not home, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Through their love of. We always used to talk on the shop floor about what they where they were going out that night. They were doing karaoke, or what they
Because
were
actually
bringing.
that's what we are as a Filipino. Doing karaoke almost every week has been part of the lifestyle here abroad. I don't know back home because I've been away like almost 20 years now. And since you've mentioned that, what traits or habits stood out for you?
Well, I was about to mention as well. I think the love of actually sharing and supporting one another, that is massively important too. And this is the thing when they're actually financially not necessarily stable at certain times, they still remember to bring something back to their colleagues, and because it's
Mm-hmm.
almost becomes a second home, right? So that's one thing that I really remembered without even asking, or they just remember certain things that they think that you would like, and then they bring that back. So yeah, it was really nice.
And but just to also ask, did any of them share their personal stories with you? But the reason why I ask is because you being one of the higher management team members in your organization, of course, you've heard many stories from your Filipino colleagues, right? So, any of them stood out for you, or something that moved you?
Yeah, I remember we had one supervisor, and I think we joined the company like 1 year apart. She'd been with the company for 1 year, and we were actually a very similar age at that time. Like I was 28, 29, and she was telling me that she'd worked in Dubai since her mid 20s. She hadn't seen a kid for 5 years, like
Wow.
pure five. Like she'd left the Philippines in her early to mid 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That must have been hard.
and yeah, very hard for her. I think her kid was 2 when she left. So
Mm-hmm.
if you think about all of those years and those moments and memories that she'd actually missed, and
Right.
she's saying she hadn't seen her kid for 5 years, but she was still sending money home every single
Mm-hmm.
month. It kind of breaks your heart. It was really hard to hear that. But you know, then seeing her on the other side with full commitment to her job, the strength that she had, the selflessness that they actually carry. Not just her, like all OFWs, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every single day they carry that. It was very inspiring. It really was.
Yeah, but this comes with, I think, in my own opinion, I think this comes with pressure. And because a lot of us Filipino workers abroad, um, it is not an option for us to leave the country and to work. This is always like an obligation for us. And do you ever feel pressure to support your family financially, if you don't mind me asking?
Um, I wouldn't say so. No, I mean, I think, especially in Western culture, which I'm kind of more exposed to, independence is very much emphasized.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go out and you know achieve things for yourself. It's not going to be given to you on a plate.
Right.
So that's kind of really the culture. Yeah, okay, I've got Filipino blood and everything, but it's still very much that Western culture that I've been exposed to really.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned being independent in the Philippine context, which I'm very much aware of. Most of us are always conscious of what people around us might say, especially our fellow kababayans. I'm going to give you an example. When you go on a night out after a hectic week, which you absolutely deserve, right? You often end up feeling guilty. Why? Because you're constantly reminded of the situation back home and influenced by what others might think or say about your choices. Sometimes I feel like, why do I feel that way? And do you think that it's something cultural or generational?
I think it's. I don't think you can have those mutually exclusive. I think it's a combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can't imagine the amount of pressure that OFWs actually feel to financially support the extended family. And it's not. I don't even think it's about. It's not about obligation. It's almost like nobody speaks about it. Like it's a silent contract about love and sacrifice. You know, it's not about
Mm-hmm.
obligation. Um, but it's correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I know and from what I've kind of seen, what it feels like in Filipino culture is that, you know, success is a collective thing. It's not just about you, it's about lifting the entire family, and I think that perspective has made me more appreciative of what my own parents actually sacrificed to give me opportunities. So I think it is very much cultural and generational, I would say.
Okay, but do you admire or feel conflicted about the level of sacrifice OFWs make on a Western point of view? Since you're in between, you're half Filipino, half British. How would you respond to this question?
It's hard not to feel conflicted, especially, I mean, because it's almost like sliding doors, you kind of almost
Mm.
put yourself in that position. And I feel like I'm in a position to put myself in that position more because of, where I was born and where I potentially could have grown up and what I could have been, you know? And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but you think about the sacrifices that OFWs make and it's enormous. But I don't know. I mean, the ones that I've had the pleasure of working with, they kind of do it just with a very quiet resilience. And I
Right.
always ask myself, could I do the same thing? And honestly, I really don't know. It's all one goes, oh yeah, I could do that, but honestly speaking, I really don't know.
Okay.
If I'd grown up in the Philippines, I think my values maybe would be more centered on, I mean, responsibility, endurance, maybe more sense of community even. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, but just out of curiosity, do you think if OFWs in like in your team, for example, would have been more focused on themselves, would you think that they will be more productive without being affected by the problems that they have back home?
Well, would they have been more productive if they were thinking about themselves? I think it depends. It depends on the individual,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're focused on yourself, it kind of like, well, it doesn't matter where the money goes, or it doesn't matter if I phone in sick this day because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all of the, so you do become more selfish and it does start to affect your job, I think, in some ways.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, okay, it's great that that you're independent. But there are some downsides to that if you've got somebody who's not necessarily able to make the right decisions around that. I actually think that added sense of responsibility, it makes somebody even more focused in their job, probably even more pressurized to even the detriment of their health in some ways. Because I've seen people come to work and I've actually said to them, you need to take a day off. Like if you need to be sick, it's okay to be sick. But they're
Yeah.
terrified of having a day off because they don't want to lose a single day of pay because they know it's going to impact not just themselves, but probably more importantly, their family back home.
Yeah, that's actually the reason why I asked, because a lot of people that I know would not skip work just because they wanted an extra hours or wanted an extra day for them to earn extra money. Because whatever they earn, whatever extra they get at the end of the month is really would benefit the family as well. But the point is they always forget themselves. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I've seen it. And again, it's even more admiration. Like, they push themselves to the limit. And
Yeah.
how is getting sick helping the family? How is that possibly compromising your health in the
Hmm.
medium term, or long term? How is that helping the family? You know? So sometimes the balance is just not right.
Yeah, this is actually one of the main reasons why I created this project for my universities because I wanted to talk about or debunk the stories or issues behind the OFWs. Um, we are heroes, or OFWs are heroes, and without the remittances of the Filipinos abroad, the economy would, I don't know what will happen to the economy, but what I know is that we are the biggest contributors for the economy. But like I said, one of the reasons is for me to stop normalizing, romanticizing the OFWs, the the life that OFWs have abroad, and the main reason why they left the Philippines has always been misunderstood. Thank you very much. And that's the end of our conversation for today's episode. And I really appreciate your insights, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
And also for the time, I know it's a work week for you, but you still managed to make time for this episode. Thank you very much.